Hello! Today I want to show you how to create songs for UltraStar, so for that SingStar style game on PC, Mac and Linux, and I'm going to do it with Yass Reloaded. I want to keep this pretty relaxed. I have not prepared this song in advance, so we are just going to see what happens along the way. The song I am using is a Bruno Mars track called Risk It All. For a song like this, the wizard is really the best place to start. It already takes care of a good part of the basic structure for you. First of all, I need the YouTube URL. I am going to copy that and press Ctrl N to open the wizard. I paste the URL in here, and with next we start downloading the video and the audio. Alright, the download is done. Yass has already tried to detect a BPM value. Now we still need to enter the artist name and the title. You can also see here that it already downloaded subtitles from YouTube. My recommendation is always take a quick look at what kind of subtitles those actually are. Here, for example, you can see that these are auto-generated subtitles, and those are usually not very useful. If the artist or the label actually took the time to provide proper lyrics, that can be okay. But in this case, that is probably not what we have. So I'm deleting the subtitles and use search lyric lib instead. Let's see what this gives us. The texts there are often pretty rough when it comes to timestamps, so it is not perfect, but it is definitely better than nothing. You can also see that there are different song lengths available. The best thing to do is just to check the song itself one more time. Here it is, 3 minutes 30. So I'm just going with this one. Apply selection, and now the lyrics are imported. Now, technically, I could also use separate vocals plus transcribe and get the lyrics through transcription. That would first create a vocal track and an instrumental track. But we'll do that sooner or later anyway. I'd rather show that in another video. Then with paste lyrics, you could compare the real lyrics with the transcription result, because transcription is still just speech recognition and sometimes it gets things wrong. So I am just moving on for now. Most of this already looks fine. This is okay. Next. Because the project is still pretty bare at this point, Yass Reloaded already assumes that I might want audio separation. I will confirm that. Here you can choose the model. I usually use MV-Sep Karaoke. That generally works pretty well. We can quickly check whether there is a newer version, but this is fine. Before we start recording, I want to quickly open TunePad and look up the song there. That often gives you the key and the BPM. BPM basically describes the main tempo of the song, so how many beats per minute it has. In UltraStar you often do not use that exact value 1-to-1. Instead you use a multiple of it. That way the grid becomes finer and you can place notes more accurately. The rule of thumb I usually use is this: if the real BPM is above 105, I double it. If it is below that, I quadruple it. Now let us compare that with our values here. Here we have 347. If I divide that by 2, I end up at 173.5. So that is a bit different. I am going to adjust that. 344 probably makes more sense here. And with recalculate, the notes that are already there get converted properly. Then I will set the key as well. I think that was D major as D major. The reason I care about the key is this: if I later place a note that does not belong to that key, Yass can mark it with an orange outline. That is pretty useful. Anyway, I will press the S key once to save. By the way, you can also configure Yass so it does not keep asking whether you really want to save. That is under Preferences, Control and then Quick Save. I have enabled that here. If that feels too fast for you, you can of course turn it off again. Then Yass will always ask before saving. Personally, I like it when I can just press S and then it saves it right away. Alright, now we can start recording. Control R. Tapping is actually pretty simple. As soon as a note is being sung, you press a key. I usually use Enter for that. But basically almost any key works except for Escape or Shift. You keep it pressed for as long as the note lasts, and you release it when the note ends. The dark green lines happy as a guide, and if that feels too fast for you, you can also reduce the playback speed.
I'd risk it all for you.
I just noticed that I stumbled a little bit while I was tapping. That is really not a big deal. I paused with Escape, so if you ever need to stop for a moment, nothing gets lost. At this point you can say, yes, keep everything, no, throw it away, or simply continue right where the cursor was. I'm just going to choose yes so you can see what happens. Yass Reloaded is doing a bit of processing now, and in this display you can already see that things can look a little strange. These little arrows show you where Yass thinks notes might be. If the grid is set to an absolute grid, you can scroll up and down here. And then you will notice that some notes were detected at slightly different positions. The reason it jumps around like that is simply that there are overtones, sibilants and other things where there's not really a clean pitch to detect. That is why it sometimes looks a bit odd. But let us just listen to how it sounds.
Just a chance to win your heart.
The first thing I notice is that there is a huge pause. I would probably insert a line break there. You go to the note and press Enter. That creates the line break. You can move between lines with the arrow up and arrow down keys. If I play the whole page with Control P, you can already hear that the pitch does not really fit. The word for is much too high. You can fix that by pressing Control, Shift and the down arrow. That moves the whole note an octave lower. That definitely sounds lower to me. And you can also hear that the word just is coming in much too late. There's a way to align the note automatically, so you do not have to move it manually, although you can if you want to. And that works with Shift plus left or right. That shifts the note. You can change the note length with Control plus left or right. Control left extends the left edge. Control right shortens it again. If I use Alt, I'm adjusting the right edge instead. Alt right extends the right side. Alt left shortens it again. You can also move the note with the mouse while holding down the mouse button.
That's probably wrong anyway.
Or can just press M, then Yass tries to distribute that note across the detected pitch positions as well as possible. Here, for example, it shortens the note because that D was already detected in this area. Over here on the right, it probably detected a C sharp. And over here on the left, it somehow detected an octave higher. None of that is really useful, so I'm just going to do it manually. You can also do that with the mouse by holding down the button on the edge of the note and changing its length. To check whether the start and end are set correctly, you can press B. That plays everything from the end of the previous note up to the cursor on this page. That already sounds pretty good. The N key plays everything behind the note up to the start of the next note. You can hear the at this point, but according to the green lights, this note is probably here.
You can hear that the just is a bit too short, so I'm going to elongate it.
So I would guess that this is still an octave too high. Once I move it down with Control Shift down, it already sounds better. We have not finished tapping yet. Down here you have the navigation bar. That shows how the pages are divided. You can click on any of them and jump straight there. You can also go to the edge of that rectangle and resize it with the mouse. That lets you zoom in and out. Or you can press Ctrl 0 on the numpad to show only one page. But for now we want to continue right here. You can see that only one pitch level is shown here right now. That was probably the point where we stopped tapping. So we will just continue here. At this point it is always worth checking what happens right before that note. That looks okay here because 2 is probably somewhere around this position. If 2 was farther to the right, I would recommend moving it back here manually, because the starting point of the next tapping pass depends on where that note is currently sitting. Now it looks like a longer instrumental section is coming up. You can tell because there are no dark green vocal parts shown here. So I'm going to skip that and press escape. Let's just keep everything we have done so far. You can also see that Yass is now trying to assign the tapped notes as well as possible. And if we just listen to it for fun, it actually does not sound bad at all.
If I look at the first note right after the instrumental section, you can see that there is a lot happening before that.
You can also grab that little box at the bottom and shift the visible area around. And here is the same recommendation as before. That say is probably happening somewhere around here. I can place the cursor there and play it with space. If I start tapping again now, it would not be ideal to leave that say where it is. Because when we start tapping again, Yass only jumps back 3 or 4 seconds. So here we are somewhere around 163 seconds and it would start again around 159. That is very tight. You really want a bit of lead in time. So I'm moving it to roughly here and then I will just finish tapping. Alright, done. You could also skip that final outro with escape. And then it is time for fine-tuning. I don't need to walk through every single detail now, but there are still a few things that are worth pointing out. Take stars for example. You can hear that Bruno moves a bit in pitch while singing it. If you want that reflected in the song, you need to split that note. Yass already does part of that semi-automatically. You can see that it basically splits stars into star and tilde S. The reason is that the final S is not sung yet on the first note. You can actually see that pretty clearly here. Underneath that, the F is sung briefly. But then Bruno moves back up to F sharp at that point. Let us see what happens if I split the note like before using the minus key. In this case, Yass cannot really tell clearly enough what is going on. So it first just splits it down the middle. You can select both notes and press M. At that point, Yass basically says, okay, F sharp is probably the dominant pitch here, but I would rather have this part sung on F. That means I need to shorten this note here. If I press M now, it maps that back to F. And if I press M again over here, it stretches it back out. That is fine. Here with the word the, you can also hear that there is some sibilance. That is why the pitch is not detected correctly. If you do this roughly, select the notes and press M, Yass often maps it quite nicely already. You can also think about starting the B a little earlier. You can see that something is really happening there, but the voice keeps gliding upward.
I would probably leave that as it is.
And that is basically how you keep working your way through the song. My recommendation is, if there are longer pauses, start a new page.
Anything you ask me to.
And in general, place the notes roughly, select everything, press M and see what happens. You also saw earlier that you can select notes with the mouse. Before it was a green box, now it is a blue box. The difference is this. If I drag from left to right, Yass selects only the notes that are fully inside the blue box. In this case, that would include could set the but not bar, because that one is only halfway inside. If I drag from right to left instead, the notes only need to be touched. So like this. Now these 4 notes are selected. That is a little behavior I stole from AutoCAD at some point because I always found it pretty useful.
You can set the bar.
Now take the word bar. That is probably something like a D sharp here. And then it glides up to the E. You can try splitting that again with the minus key. And there you can see that Yass actually handled it pretty well.
You can set the bar.
But in the end, that is also a matter of taste. It would have been perfectly fine to leave the whole thing on an E. I think that covers the most important features for now. I will just keep going a little bit, and if I notice anything else that is worth pointing out, I will record another short section. I already showed you that automatic split behavior earlier. When you split notes, the letters are already distributed a little across those notes. If you don't like how that automatic behavior handles it, you can select the notes and press either Shift E or Shift W. That lets you move the letters to the right or to the left. For example, I have selected the word climb here. If I press Shift E, the last letter of the first note gets moved to the right. If I do it again, the next letter also gets moved to the right. If I press Shift W, the first letter of the second note gets moved to the left. You can also do that with multiple notes. I am splitting here once, and in the background I can see that the pitch goes down again at this point. So I assume that the automatic behavior did not really get it right here. Then I press M. If I now select all 3 notes, I can use Shift E to distribute the text from the first note toward the last note. So at this point I am roughly done with the pitches I wanted to set. As a last step, I would go down here to the error dialog to see what still looks odd. You can see here that there is no golden bonus yet. And there's also a short page break that looks questionable. So let's fix that. This part is kind of matter of taste. It shortens that note here, even though this one is probably still supposed to be that long. I would leave it like this for now. That is not too bad. For the golden bonus, you can just go to Extras, Suggest Golden Notes. Then you will see that Yass did a little bit of work there. For example, there is a very long note here, another very long one here, and one more over here. On the bottom left, you can see that the number of golden notes is maybe a little too high. So I would deselect some of that again, here with the G key. And then you can see, okay, we are roughly at +4. That is fine. I will save that. Next, we still need to set the medley notes. I usually start with the first verse. You can set the medley start with the A key. The medley usually ends after the first chorus. This here already looks like the second verse.
I'd risk it all for you.
So this is probably the first chorus. I go to the last note of the first chorus, press Shift A, and that sets the medley end. I usually place the preview on the chorus as well. So I will just set that here with Shift I. That sets the preview start. That looks fine. I save it and the song is finished. The next thing I still need is a cover image. So I search on Fan Art TV. That is usually my first go-to place. For example, the romantic is, I think, actually the album cover. I will just look around for larger images. This one looks good. Let's take that. That seems to be an official image. For the cover, I usually go to the USDB Syncer meta text dialog because downloading the image there is just very convenient. At that point, I also save the txt file, but really only if I want to upload it to usdb.animax.de afterwards. Once I have done that, I open that dialog again. Just then notice that the file contains Syncer text and asks whether I want to restore the original text. The reason for that is that USDB does not support all UltraStar tags. Those extra pieces of information get stored inside the video tag, so they do not get lost when you upload the file. But apart from that, the song is basically done. In the next video, I will show how to work in the wizard with the different transcription options. So with Whisper X, OpenAI Whisper, and YouTube subtitles.